Hello and welcome to Matrix Live. My guest today is Eric Eastwood, who you might know as Mad Little Mods. He was the sole developer looking after Gitter. He successfully made Gitter speak Matrix and turned the Gitter client into a branded Element 1 following the acquisition. Eric is not here today to talk about Gitter, but he's here to talk about the Matrix Public Archive. So Eric, welcome. You did a demo a while ago, it was a few weeks ago, of the Matrix Public Archive, but can you remind us what it is?
Yep. So the Matrix Public Archive allows you to view historical Matrix content and navigate your room day by day, or even jump back a year or 7 and see what your room is up to. So you can go try it out at archive.matrix.org. And that's where we have our public canonical instance that everyone can use. The most impactful benefit you'll notice is that it allows you to share content from a Matrix room without any of the friction that you typically see when going through like a Matrix Z2 permalink and trying to just see the content. With the archive, you can just visit the link, see the content directly. And it gets rid of the friction where it's like, which home server do I register on? Why do I even need an account in some of these cases? How do I see this content on mobile? Like each sort of flow there, like a decision needs to be made, and this gets rid of all those sort of friction points. You just visit the link, see the content. It's simple like that. Also importantly, it allows your favorite search engine to do the same thing. So you can just have the search engines index the content simply and see the content and harness that massive knowledge base that exists on Matrix today. So when you're searching a question that happened on Matrix, that sort of information will pop up and be relevant in the search results. I guess one note I'd like to make is that even though it has the word archive in it, it doesn't actually archive anything. It stores nothing on that site and pulls the information from the home server on every request. So there's just a tiny bit of caching on top to make sure everything flows smooth and we don't waste time on trying to request resources that haven't changed within a 5-minute window, but just a basic, simple, stateless app.
Right, so in a way, the Matrix Public Archive is nothing but a client to access the public room, a read-only client to access the public room. But you said something very interesting, and that's a bit dangerous to me. You said that search engines can peek in public rooms to browse content, and that's a double-edged sword to me. Because on one hand, I'd be excited to see results from Matrix when I look up a question. Like, for example, instead of going to StackOverflow, I go to the Matrix Public Archive and I have the answer to my question. That's very exciting. But on another, some people are not too fond of getting their discussions indexed by tech giants. To take an analogy, it could be like having a conversation in a park or in a bar where it is public, and doing the same, but with somebody recording the conversation and putting the video online. So is it possible for me to have a public room and deny access to the public archive?
Yeah, so currently we only index world readable Matrix rooms, which means you set the history visibility to world readable. And there's a complete difference between a public room and a world readable room. And we only allow search engines to index in that world readable narrow case. There's also additional conversations going on. There's an issue on GitHub where we want to give better controls to signal whether you want your room to be indexed in the first place. So it's probably going to end up something like the robots meta tag that exists today for like HTML pages. And then you can simply just specify no index, no archive, and we can just key off that and go that way.
All right, so that project is interesting, but it reminds me of something very similar. That is quite ancient, actually. The view.matrix.org project seems quite close to what you are describing. So is the Matrix Public Archive just a fresh coat of CSS on top of view.matrix.org?
I don't have a ton of insight into how the old system worked or the exact differences there, but it does cover a similar niche. Like you want to see content from a Matrix room, and it kind of tries to allow you to do that simply. But basically, there was some desire to make something with more element feeling polish, loading faster, and especially coming from the Gitter world where I was doing a bunch of stuff. All of that stuff just worked seamlessly before. A big difference between the two is being able to show messages from a given day or do that day-by-day navigation.
So interestingly, let's stop just on that for a moment. You said it just worked for Gitter before. So you had to adapt this feature to Matrix after making Gitter speak Matrix. So this is a lot of effort, I believe, but does it also mean that this is work that all the platforms get for free if they start speaking Matrix?
Yeah, absolutely. So like the reason we were able to migrate the Gitter legacy app over to Matrix is because all of those features and concepts just exist in the Matrix ecosystem today. So anyone like adding support for Matrix gets those things out of the box.
Right. And before we dig more into the technicalities of the project, because I believe there is a lot behind what you have been doing, can you call out a few needs that the public archive answers to? Like, how is it going to make Matrix more appealing?
Uh, so I hit on some of this earlier, how it reduces like the friction on trying to just view content and how search engines are able to look at some stuff now. But there's also huge opportunities with how this interacts and pairs with Matrix.2, the permalinking site. So we could have we could use the Matrix Public Archive for a room preview on Matrix.2, or how either platform might morph into the other, because it's easy to onboard from archive.matrix.org, and you can see how both are kind of like entrance points into the ecosystem. Why not start at something where you can just see the content and then jump into an actual client when you want to start chatting? There's even opportunities to extract more Gitter feature parity out of it, where we can allow people to embed the archive into their own site and then get a similar Gitter sidecar experience where you can say, check out our project room, and then it'll pop up a little thing. You can see the content and then jump over to get support on whatever you're trying to work on.
All right, so this is making a lot more appealing, indeed. And I was wondering, so a lot of the work behind the Matrix Public Archive is around hydrogen, but is it 100% front-end work to make a read-only client with a date picker, or did it require spec changes and new features more on the back-end side?
So we were rolling a bunch of stuff in the background, and that's the whole reason it took a couple of years for that Gitter migration to complete. So it took a massive change in the way you're able to navigate a matrix room. So we introduced the Jump to Date API with MSE 3030, and that powers the whole mechanism where you can visit a URL with a date and see that content at the time. Like previously, you just had to scroll back and do page after page after page, which doesn't scale or work good for the user when you want to jump back a year ago. And also, since the archive is optimizing for search engines, it took a ton of work to server-side render hydrogen, and that gets us a bunch of benefits. Like it's pretty out of the box. It's like simple and semantic HTML by just server-side rendering a page, and it keeps the maintenance burden of supporting new event types like threads, polls over in Hydrogen itself. So when Hydrogen updates, we get those benefits for free. Also, I guess on the server side, there's a whole chunk of logic that you might not even like associate with that needs to happen. So we can transparently navigate the room upgrade path, so successors, predecessor chain of rooms. Like if you say, I want messages from 5 years ago, we'll go find that old room that everyone needs to chat in and show you the content from the day.
All right, and so you said you mentioned that previously you had to iterate over the history to get back to a certain date, and with the new API now it's possible to just jump to that date. This was done in part because the performance would not be acceptable if you had to iterate through the whole history. But do we owe you other several performance improvements in Synapse?
So when we initially made the archive, we noticed that its last messages was one of the slowest API endpoints to get through the data fetching part of it. And there's been a lot of headway since I've started, where we were initially seeing requests as long as or longer than 180 seconds. Like that's the Synapse timeout, and like it's obviously no good if we can't even get something within 3 minutes. So we optimize it, and like those sort of requests are down to 20 seconds. But obviously, in that scenario, that's way too slow when you just want to visit a link and see what's happening. So there's like a whole host of issues that we still want to work on, and there's a milestone in the Synapse repo. It's called faster slash messages, and you can track what's going on there. But keep in mind, like the 20 seconds, that's a worst case scenario. Like lots of things load much faster than that. But it's just good to optimize the slowest things first, because those things trickle down to everything else and are basically just magnified versions of requests you see day to day.
All right. And so the Matrix Public Archive sounds like a very complete project, and well, basically it's doing what it's doing. So what more could you do? Is it complete? Is it done? Do you plan to add new features? Is it even possible to add new features without making it a fully fledged client? Or the performance improvements, maybe?
There's like, yeah, right now it's kind of a good V1, and some people can start getting some value from it, I guess. And then, but there's a ton of things we want to polish and add, like URL previews. Like you can link one message, like similar to a matrix, a two permalink. You can permalink a message in the archive, and we want that to display the author, the message contents directly. So you can share that on Twitter, share that with an element, and it just shows what you're trying to talk about. Another big one is threads. So like once Hydrogen gets support for threading, that'll unlock the whole feature in the archive itself as well. One, I guess, big thing I'm excited to iterate on within the archive, it's kind of a future looking change though, but it's exciting web technology, like is the View Transitions API, which will take our multi-page server-side rendered app and then turn it into something that's the user doesn't even have to think about like that detail. It doesn't matter that every time you click something, it loads a new page. The transitions will just make it feel like a seamless app. So that first and foremost means we need the page transitions to be fast. Each time you click something, it needs to load fast. So we have to look at this last messages stuff more and continue iterating on that stuff. But for a situation when threads are supported, instead of like waiting for the page to go blank, come back, it'll just open up the thread panel like a native app would. And that sort of detail, server-side render detail, melts away to the user. I think I think that's a way to kind of get back to user functionality that they're used to, like with any other app, but still maintain our simple semantic niceness that search engines really enjoy crunching through.
All right, so to me, it sounds like a lot of making the experience better for the users by being more snappy, being smoother, etc., while keeping everything minimalistic, doing the bare minimum that's needed, basically. Is there anything else we forgot to mention?
So I guess go check out the project on GitHub. It's just a bunch of JavaScript and should be easy enough to contribute to. And good to repeat, go check out archive.matrix.org. That's where everything's happening, and it's the new portal into the Matrix ecosystem.
In that case, I think it's time to finish the interview. Thank you very much, Eric. I'm very excited to see where the Matrix Public Archive is going to. I'm very excited to see all the improvements you can bring to Synapse, because it's been amazing to see the great improvements we have seen in Synapse thanks to that project. I also like that you are using Hydrogen for that. Like it's like all the pieces of Matrix coming together. Even the Git acquisition, some people were a bit skeptical, and it's really nice to see how an acquisition can have such an impact on the ecosystem. So it's really great to have you on board and to see you working on all that. And Matrix Live, I'll see you next week. I promise this time. See you.